I never thought Thanksgiving dinner would turn into the most humiliating moment of my life, or so I believed at the time. My name is Margaret Elizabeth Hayes. I'm 68 years old, and I've been living what I thought was a peaceful retirement in my beautiful Victorian home in Charleston, South Carolina. The house sits on a corner lot in the historic district, with its pristine white columns and wraparound porch that overlooks a garden I've tended for 3 decades. The magnolia trees in my yard were in full bloom that November, their white petals creating a perfect backdrop for what should have been a family gathering filled with gratitude and love. My son David had been living with me for the past 2 years, after his messy divorce from his first wife, Sarah. The divorce had left him financially drained and emotionally broken. I welcomed him back into the home where he'd grown up, hoping to help him rebuild his life. Along with David came his new girlfriend, Jennifer, a woman 15 years his junior, whom he'd met at a coffee shop downtown and married just 6 months ago in a small courthouse ceremony. I wasn't invited to the wedding. They said it was intimate, just the 2 of them and a witness. Jennifer was 34, worked in marketing for a tech startup, and always seemed so confident and put together with her designer clothes and perfectly styled blonde hair. She drove a BMW that she claimed was a company car, though I later discovered David was making the payments. Maybe that should have been my first warning sign about her true nature. The morning of Thanksgiving, I woke up at 5 a.m. to begin preparations. I spent hours preparing the 20-pound turkey, hand-mashing Yukon Gold potatoes with real butter and cream, making green bean casserole from scratch, and preparing my famous cornbread stuffing using my mother's century-old recipe. The smell of sage, rosemary, and thyme filled every corner of the house as I arranged the fall centerpiece I'd crafted myself using gourds from my garden and autumn leaves I'd collected during my morning walks. I wanted everything to be perfect for our first holiday as an expanded family. I set the dining room table with my grandmother's Haviland china, the delicate pink roses still vibrant after all these years. I polished the silver candlesticks that had been wedding gifts to my parents and arranged the linen napkins my mother had embroidered by hand. Jennifer had invited her sister Kelly and brother-in-law Mark, which I initially thought was wonderful. More family meant more love around the table, or so I naively believed. When they arrived in their matching Range Rovers, I noticed how Jennifer immediately took charge, directing where everyone should sit, rearranging my carefully planned seating chart without asking permission. She moved my place card from the head of the table, where I'd sat for 30 years, to a side seat near the kitchen door. But I bit my tongue, swallowed my pride, and smiled graciously. I wanted harmony above all else. As we gathered around the table, I began to carve the turkey with the silver carving set that had belonged to my husband's father, when Jennifer suddenly cleared her throat loudly and placed her manicured hand on my wrist. "Actually, Margaret," she said with a cold smile that didn't reach her eyes, "I thought you weren't invited to this dinner." The room fell silent, except for the gentle ticking of the grandfather clock in the hallway. My hands trembled as I set down the carving knife, confusion washing over me like a cold wave from the Charleston harbor. Before we continue with this shocking story, I'd love to know, where are you watching this from? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe and hit that like button if you're enjoying Margaret's story. Jennifer's eyes gleamed with a satisfaction that made my stomach turn and my heart race with anxiety. She straightened her shoulders, clearly relishing this moment she'd obviously planned in advance. "Well, since David and I are married now, we've decided it's time for some changes around here. This is our home now, and we'll be hosting our own family gatherings from now on." Her sister Kelly nodded approvingly while sipping wine from my crystal glasses, while her brother-in-law Mark shifted uncomfortably in his seat, clearly sensing the cruelty of the moment. I looked desperately at my son David, waiting for him to defend me, to explain this horrible misunderstanding, to stand up like the man I'd raised him to be. Instead, he stared intently at his plate, as if the pattern on the china held the secrets of the universe, unable to meet my eyes. The silence stretched for what felt like hours before he finally mumbled, "Mom, Jennifer and I have been talking. Maybe it would be better if you found your own place. We need our space as a married couple. It's what's best for everyone." The words hit me like a physical blow to my chest. I felt my breathing become shallow and rapid, struggling to process what was happening. My own son, the baby I'd held through. Countless nights when he had colic, the boy I'd cheered for at every baseball game, the young man I'd put through college working double shifts at the hospital. He was asking me to leave my own home. "David, this is my house," I said, my voice barely above a whisper but carrying the weight of 3 decades of memories. "I bought it 30 years ago with your father's life insurance money after he died in that terrible car accident on Highway 17. You were only 12 then, remember? I worked as a night shift nurse at Charleston General while attending law school during the day, just so I could provide for us both." My voice cracked as memories flooded back. How I'd sacrificed my own needs for years, how I'd turned down promotions that required travel, how I'd saved every penny to ensure David could go to any college he wanted. I remembered the nights I'd fallen asleep over law books at the kitchen table, studying by lamplight after David had gone to bed, determined to build a better future for both of us. Jennifer laughed then, a sound sharp and cutting as breaking. "Crystal." "Oh, please, Margaret, don't be so dramatic with all these sob stories. David is the man of the house now, and legally, spouses have rights to marital property. Besides, you're getting older. Wouldn't a nice little senior community be more appropriate for someone your age? Somewhere with activities and people your own generation?" The condescension in her voice was unmistakable, treating me like a confused child who couldn't understand simple concepts. Kelly chimed in, "Jennifer's right, Margaret. My mother-in-law moved to Sunset Manor last year, and she just loves all the organized activities. They have bingo every Tuesday." The rage building inside me was unlike anything I'd ever experienced, a white-hot fury that threatened to consume everything in its path. But years of Southern grace and professional composure kept my voice steady, even as my hands clenched into fists beneath the table. "I see. And where exactly do you think I should go on Thanksgiving Day, Jennifer?" "That's not really our problem anymore," Jennifer replied coolly, cutting into the turkey I'd spent all morning preparing with loving care. "We've given you plenty of time to figure things out. David's been supporting you long enough. It's time for him to focus on his new family." I stood up slowly, my legs shaking with a combination of rage and heartbreak. Supporting me? I'd been paying every single bill in this house, buying all the groceries, maintaining the property, even paying for Jennifer's expensive skincare products and designer coffee, while they lived here completely rent-free. But what hurt most wasn't the financial injustice. It was David's cowardly silence, my own son whom I'd raised with love and sacrifice, letting this woman humiliate and disrespect me in my own home. Little did Jennifer know, I'd been preparing for this exact moment longer than she could possibly imagine. I excused myself from the table with as much dignity as I could muster, telling them I needed a moment to process this generous offer to find new accommodations. Jennifer smirked triumphantly as I walked toward my bedroom, probably thinking she'd won some decisive victory in a war I didn't even know we were fighting. Her sister whispered something about how these older folks just don't know when it's time to step aside and let the younger generation take charge. In my bedroom, I opened my antique jewelry box, not for jewelry, but for the small brass key hidden beneath the velvet lining, the same key my husband had used to secure important documents during his own legal career. This key opened a filing cabinet in my walk-in closet, where I kept documents Jennifer had never bothered to investigate because she assumed I was just a helpless old widow who couldn't possibly understand modern legal complexities. You see, when you've lived through your husband's sudden death in a car accident caused by a drunk driver, when you've raised a child completely alone while building a career from nothing, you learn to be prepared for absolutely anything life might throw at you. Trust, once broken by tragedy, teaches you to protect yourself in ways others might never consider necessary. Inside that cabinet were property deeds dating back to 1993, 30 years of tax records meticulously organized in chronological order, homeowners' insurance policies, and most importantly, a stack of legal documents I'd had prepared 3 months ago when I first noticed Jennifer's increasingly controlling and manipulative behavior toward both David and myself. My lawyer, Robert Stevens of Stevens & Associates, had been my late husband's best friend since their days at the University of South Carolina Law School. Robert had watched David grow up, had been at every birthday party and graduation ceremony. When I first confided my growing concerns about Jennifer's true intentions and her obvious attempts to isolate David from his family and friends, Robert had advised me to take immediate steps to protect myself legally and financially. "Margaret," he'd said during our confidential consultation, "I've seen this pattern before. Adult children who allow manipulative partners to convince them their parents are burdens rather than blessings. You need to protect yourself before it's too late." I pulled out a manila envelope marked "Confidential Family Trust Documents" and returned to the dining room, where Jennifer was now holding court like a queen addressing her subjects, discussing in great detail how she planned to redecorate what she clearly considered her new home. She wanted to tear down the wall between the kitchen and dining room to create an open concept space, modernize everything with sleek contemporary furniture, and maybe even convert my late husband's cherished study, filled with his law books and family photographs, into a massive walk-in closet for her ever-expanding wardrobe. "Before you make any renovation plans or call any contractors," I said calmly, placing the envelope on the table with deliberate precision, "there's something very important you should know about this house and its legal ownership status." Jennifer barely glanced up from her plate, too busy savoring what she thought was her moment of triumph. "What now, Margaret? More sentimental stories about the good old days?" "Actually, it's about the present and the future," I replied, opening the envelope with steady hands and extracting several sets of legal documents. "You see, Jennifer, while you've been busy planning my eviction and designing your dream home renovations, I've been doing some planning of my own. This house isn't just in my name anymore. As of 3 months ago, it's been placed in an irrevocable trust with very specific terms and conditions." David finally looked up from his plate, confusion replacing the shame that had clouded his features. "Mom, what are you talking about? What kind of trust?" I pulled out the trust documents, my hands now steady as steel, my voice carrying the authority of someone who'd spent decades in courtrooms. 3 months ago, I transferred ownership of this property into the Margaret Elizabeth Hayes Family Trust. As the sole trustee, I maintain complete control over who lives here, under what conditions, and for how long. The color drained from Jennifer's face as she began to realize her perfectly orchestrated plan was about to crumble. Jennifer snatched the documents from my hands with the desperation of someone watching their dreams dissolve before their eyes. Her perfectly manicured nails scanning frantically through pages of legal terminology she clearly didn't understand. "This can't be legal. David, do something. Call someone. She can't just change everything without telling us." But as she read further, encountering phrases like irrevocable trust, sole trustee authority, and beneficiary rights subject to trustee discretion, her confident facade began crumbling like a house of cards in a Charleston hurricane. The trust was ironclad. I'd made absolutely sure of that, having learned from decades of legal practice exactly how to protect assets from people with malicious intentions. "There's more you need to understand," I continued, my voice gaining strength with each word as I pulled out a second set of papers. "These are the rental agreements you'll need to sign if you wish to continue living in my home. According to current market research I had conducted by Charleston Premium Real Estate, fair market rate for a Victorian home of this size and location is $3,200 per month, plus utilities, plus a security deposit equal to 2 months' rent." David's jaw dropped so far I thought it might unhinge completely. Mom, you can't be serious. We don't have that kind of money. My divorce cleaned out all my savings, and Jennifer's job barely covers her car payment and shopping expenses. Then, perhaps you both should have thought about financial planning before allowing your wife to disrespect and humiliate me in my own home, I replied, the weight of months of silent endurance giving unprecedented power to my words. Jennifer, you mentioned earlier that David has been supporting me? Let me clarify something that apparently needs clarification. I walked to the kitchen and returned with a thick folder I'd prepared weeks ago, anticipating this exact confrontation. Inside were detailed financial records, receipts, bank statements, and expense reports that painted a very different picture than the one Jennifer had been selling. Every single expense for the past 2 years is meticulously documented in here. Mortgage payments, property taxes, homeowners insurance, utilities, groceries, household supplies, maintenance costs, even the premium cable package Jennifer insisted we needed for her reality TV shows. I opened the folder and began reading. From a summary sheet, monthly mortgage payment, $1,147. Property taxes, $3,200 annually. Insurance, $100 to $800 annually. Average monthly utilities, $340. Groceries and household supplies, approximately $800 per month. Based on these documented expenses over 24 months, plus the fair market rental value, David owes me approximately $47,000 in back rent and living expenses. Jennifer's sister Kelly whispered urgently in her ear, but Jennifer's face had turned an ashen gray as she began to comprehend the depth of her catastrophic miscalculation. You can't just kick us out like common renters. We have rights. We've established residency here. Actually, you don't have the rights you think you do, I said calmly, producing another document from what seemed like an endless supply of legal paperwork. This 30-day notice to vacate was properly filed with the Charleston County Clerk of Court this morning at 9 a.m., exactly 3 hours before you arrived for dinner. I had a strong feeling today might not go according to your plans. The room fell into complete silence, except for the steady ticking of my grandmother's mantel clock and the distant sound of children playing in the neighborhood park. Jennifer's brother-in-law, Mark, cleared his throat awkwardly, clearly uncomfortable with the family drama unfolding before him. Maybe we should go, honey. This really seems like a private family matter that needs to be worked out between relatives. But I wasn't finished delivering the justice that had been building inside me for months. Before anyone leaves this table or this house, there's one more thing you all should know about exactly who you've been dealing with. I looked directly at Jennifer, my voice now carrying the full weight of every insult, every dismissive comment, every calculated attempt to erase me from my own life and home. Jennifer, you've spent the past several months systematically trying to convince David that I'm nothing more than a burden, that I'm too old and confused to manage my own affairs, that I'm some helpless widow who doesn't understand how the modern world works. I opened my purse and pulled out my professional business cards, ones I hadn't used in 5 years but had kept specifically for moments exactly like this one. Allow me to properly introduce myself. Margaret Elizabeth Hayes, Juris Doctor from University of South Carolina School of Law, Master of Laws in Estate Planning from Georgetown University, retired senior partner of Hayes & Associates law firm. I set the cards on the table like a poker player revealing a royal flush. I practiced family law, estate planning, and elder law for 37 years before retiring early to take care of my husband during his final illness with pancreatic cancer. The shock on Jennifer's face was almost comical. Her mouth opened and closed like a fish, gasping for air. David stared at me as if seeing me for the very first time in his life, which in many ways he was. Mom, I never knew. You never told me about the advanced degree, about being a senior partner, because you never asked, son. You've been so completely absorbed in your new life and your new wife that you forgot I had a whole successful existence before you were born and a thriving career after you left for college. I walked over to the built-in bookshelf and pulled out several thick legal volumes, their spines worn from years of use. I built a successful law practice from absolutely nothing, served on the Charleston County Bar Association Board of Directors. For 12 years, mentored dozens of young attorneys and specialized specifically in cases involving financial elder abuse and family property disputes. I opened one of the volumes to a page I'd bookmarked years ago. Here's a case I argued before the South Carolina Supreme Court in 2008, Rodriguez versus Rodriguez Estate. A daughter-in-law tried to convince her husband that his elderly mother was mentally incompetent so they could gain control of her $2.3 million estate. I not only proved the mother was completely competent, but I also exposed the daughter-in-law's elaborate scheme to forge medical documents. She received 5 years in federal prison for mail fraud and conspiracy. Jennifer's complexion was now the color of old parchment, but I wasn't finished with my revelation. Then there was the Patterson case in 2011. Adult children convinced their father to sign over his home while he was recovering from heart surgery, claiming they would take care of everything. They immediately put it on the market and planned to place him in a state-run facility. I got the deed transfer reversed, won damages of $400,000, and had all 3 children charged with elder abuse. I pulled out a framed photograph from the bookshelf, me shaking hands with the governor of South Carolina at an award ceremony. This was taken in 2012 when I received the Distinguished Service Award from the South Carolina Bar Association for my work protecting elderly citizens from financial exploitation. The governor called me a fierce guardian of our state's most vulnerable residents. David picked up the photograph with trembling hands, studying it as if it were an artifact from a lost civilization. "Mom, why didn't you ever tell me about any of this? About your achievements, your recognition?" "Because I didn't need recognition from you, David. I needed your respect, your love, and your loyalty. I needed you to remember that I'm not just your mother. I'm a human being with a lifetime of experiences, accomplishments, and wisdom that extends far beyond changing your diapers and packing your school lunches." I turned back to face Jennifer directly, my voice carrying the full weight of 4 decades in the legal profession. "I chose to retire early when your father-in-law received his terminal diagnosis because I believed, foolishly it seems, that family mattered more than professional recognition or financial success. I wanted to spend his final months together, traveling to all the places we dreamed of visiting, making memories instead of billing hours." Jennifer's hands shook visibly as she reached for her wine glass, but her voice still carried a note of desperate defiance. "So what? Being a lawyer doesn't change anything. You're still trying to manipulate the situation. Age doesn't make you immune to being wrong." I laughed then, a sound filled with genuine amusement at her continued arrogance, even in the face of complete defeat. "Oh, my dear Jennifer, when you assumed you could manipulate and intimidate your way into stealing my home and my life savings, you picked absolutely the wrong old lady to mess with. You see, I didn't just handle a few cases like this. I've built my entire career on protecting people exactly like myself from people exactly like you." I pulled out another folder, this one containing newspaper clippings and magazine articles. Charleston Post and Courier, October 15, 2010. Local attorney Margaret Hayes wins landmark elder abuse case. Charleston Business Journal, March 2013. Hayes and Associates sets new standard for estate protection. Southern Living magazine featured my work in their 2014 article about protecting aging parents from financial predators. Jennifer's sister Kelly stood up abruptly, her face pale with recognition of how catastrophically wrong this situation had gone. "Jennifer, we really need to leave. This is getting way too complicated for us to handle." But I held up my hand with the authority of someone accustomed to controlling courtrooms. "Please, sit down, Kelly. You're part of this conspiracy too, since you've been complicit in this scheme from the very beginning. You see, I had Robert Stevens hire a private investigator to look into both your backgrounds last month. The report makes for fascinating reading." I produced yet another folder, this one stamped with the logo of Charleston's most prestigious private investigation firm. "Jennifer, your marketing job?" It's part-time contract work that pays $200 per month when they have projects available. Your BMW? Repossessed 2 weeks ago, though you've been renting a similar model to maintain appearances. Your credit score? 487, which puts you in the bottom 5% of all American consumers. You've declared bankruptcy twice in the past 8 years. The silence in the room was now oppressive, broken only by Jennifer's increasingly rapid breathing. Kelly, the investigation also revealed some interesting facts about your finances. 3 maxed-out credit cards, 2 judgments against you for unpaid debts, and you've been using Jennifer's scheme as inspiration for your own plan to manipulate your elderly in-laws in Savannah. David's face went completely white, his hands gripping, the edge of the table so tightly his knuckles showed. Mom, is all of this really true? Have I been living with someone who... Every single word, son, and there's more. Jennifer has been systematically isolating you from your friends, hasn't she? When was the last time you spoke to Mike from college? Or went fishing with your cousin Robert? She's convinced you that I disapprove of all your relationships when... The truth is, she's been intercepting phone calls and messages, creating problems where none existed. I walked over to my secretary desk and pulled out a small recording device. South Carolina is a one-party consent state, which means I can legally record conversations in my own home. Jennifer, would you like to hear the conversation you had with Kelly last Tuesday about how you planned to have me declared mentally incompetent so David could gain power of attorney? Jennifer shot up from her chair so quickly she nearly knocked it over. This is entrapment. This is illegal. You can't record people without their knowledge. Actually, I can, and I did. But more importantly, your admission just now that you were planning to have me declared incompetent constitutes conspiracy to commit fraud, a felony in South Carolina, punishable by up to 10 years in prison. I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at my beloved magnolia trees, their beauty a stark contrast to the ugliness that had invaded my home. David, your father would be absolutely devastated to see what you've become, to see how easily you've been manipulated into betraying your own mother. When he was dying, he made me promise 2 things. Always take care of you, but never let anyone, including you, take advantage of our family legacy. When I turned back around, David had tears streaming down his face, his shoulders shaking with the weight of his realization. Mom, I'm so sorry. I don't know how things got so twisted, how I let this happen to us. I do, I said firmly, my voice carrying 3 decades of legal authority and a mother's broken heart. They got twisted when you chose someone else's greed and manipulation over your mother's unconditional love and wisdom. This story is getting more intense by the minute. If you're loving these incredible plot twists, make sure to hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. The silence in the room was deafening until Jennifer suddenly shot up from her chair like a rocket, the antique seat scraping harshly against my grandmother's hardwood floors. Her face was flushed red with a combination of rage and humiliation, her carefully applied makeup now smeared from stress and perspiration. This is absolutely ridiculous. David, we're leaving right now. We'll contest all of this in court. We'll find a real lawyer who actually knows what they're doing, not some washed-up old woman living in the past and making empty threats. I smiled then, the first genuine smile I'd felt all evening, possibly all year. It was the kind of smile that had intimidated opposing counsel for decades, the smile that said, I knew something they didn't. Please, by all means, try to contest it. I would absolutely welcome the opportunity to represent myself in court against whatever attorney you manage to find who's willing to take such a hopeless case. I walked over to another bookshelf and pulled out a thick directory. You see, Jennifer, I didn't just practice family law. I specialized specifically in cases involving financial elder abuse, inheritance disputes, and property fraud. I know every law, every precedent, every possible loophole you might try to exploit. More importantly, I know every family law attorney in Charleston, Columbia, and Greenville. Most of them were either my colleagues, my former students, or lawyers who argued cases against me. I opened the directory to a page marked with a yellow sticky note. Here's the thing about lawyers, Jennifer. We talk to each other a lot. And when someone tries to bring a frivolous lawsuit against a respected former colleague, especially one involving elder abuse, word spreads very quickly through the legal community. No reputable attorney in this state will touch your case once they realize who they'd be going up against. Jennifer's face had gone from red to white to a sickly gray-green color that reminded me of old seaweed. But she wasn't ready to surrender. Completely. You're bluffing. You can't control every lawyer in South Carolina. You're right, I can't control them. But I can share my professional opinion about the merits of your case. I pulled out one final document, a legal analysis I'd prepared the night before. I took the liberty of drafting a preliminary brief outlining your position. Any competent attorney will immediately recognize that you don't just have no case, you've actually committed several serious crimes that I could have you prosecuted for right now. I began reading from the document as if I were addressing a jury. Count 1, attempted fraud under South Carolina Code, Section 16 to 13 to 10, specifically conspiracy to obtain property through false pretenses. Count 2, elder abuse under Statute 43, 35 to 25, which includes financial exploitation and emotional abuse of a vulnerable adult. Count 3, criminal conspiracy under Section 16, 17, 410. Count 4, attempted theft of property valued at over $100,000, which constitutes grand larceny. Jennifer's sister Kelly grabbed her arm with increasing urgency. Jennifer, we need to go, right now. This is way over our heads. But I wasn't finished delivering the complete picture of their legal jeopardy. The penalties for these crimes, when combined, include up to 15 years in prison and restitution of triple the attempted theft amount. In this case, based on the current market value of this property and the equity involved, that would be approximately $850,000 in restitution, plus court costs, plus attorney fees. I walked over to my computer and printed out a document I'd prepared earlier. I also took the liberty of researching your employment history, Jennifer. 3 jobs in 5 years, 2 terminated for cause, which usually means theft or fraud in the corporate world. Your current employer has no idea about your criminal intentions here, do they? I wonder how they'd feel about having someone plotting elder abuse on their payroll. Jennifer's breathing was becoming rapid and shallow, the reality of her situation finally penetrating her entitled worldview. You can't, you wouldn't dare. Oh, but I would, and I will if necessary, I replied calmly. You see, at my age, with my background and with my resources, I have nothing to lose and everything to protect. This house, this legacy, this family history, it means everything to me. And I will use every tool at my disposal, every connection I've made, every favor I'm owed to protect what's mine. David looked back and forth between his wife and his mother, a man finally seeing clearly after months of manipulation and lies. The fog of confusion that had clouded his judgment was finally lifting, revealing the stark reality of what he'd allowed to happen under his own roof. Jennifer, maybe we should really think about this seriously. Maybe we should apologize and try to work something out with Mom. She has every legal right. No! Jennifer exploded, her voice reaching a pitch that probably disturbed every dog in the neighborhood and sent birds fleeing from the nearby trees. I will not be intimidated and manipulated by some old woman playing legal games with documents that probably aren't even real. We're married, David. That means something, in sickness and in health, for richer or poorer. You promised to put me first. You have to choose between her and me. The moment of ultimate truth had finally arrived. David stood up slowly, his shoulders straightening as if a great weight was being lifted from them, his spine finding the strength it had lost months ago under Jennifer's constant manipulation. Then I choose, he said quietly. But his voice carried more strength and conviction than I'd heard from him in 2 years. I choose to apologize to my mother and beg for her forgiveness. I choose to remember who I am and who raised me to be better than this." He turned to face me directly, tears flowing freely down his cheeks, his voice cracking with emotion. "Mom, I am so deeply, profoundly ashamed of how I've acted, of what I've allowed to happen in your own home. You raised me to be honorable, to protect the people I love, to stand up for what's right even when it's difficult. Instead, I let myself be systematically manipulated into betraying the woman who sacrificed absolutely everything for me." David walked around the table and knelt beside my chair, taking my hands in his. "You worked double shifts as a nurse while going to law school, just so I could have a better life. You gave up promotions and opportunities because they would have taken you away from me. You put me through college, supported me through my divorce, opened your home to me when I had nowhere else to go. And how did I repay you? By standing silent while my wife tried to steal everything you've worked for." Jennifer stared at him in complete disbelief, her mouth opening and closing as she struggled to process this unexpected turn of events. "You're actually choosing her over me? After everything we've planned together? After all our dreams about renovating this place and making it ours?" "I'm not choosing sides, Jennifer. I'm choosing right over wrong," David replied, his voice growing stronger and more resolute with each word. "I'm choosing the woman who worked 2 jobs to put me through college, who sat by my bedside for 3 days when I had pneumonia in 3rd grade, who taught me the difference between right and wrong, who never once asked for anything in return, for her unconditional love except that I grow up to be a good man." He stood up and faced his wife with a dignity I hadn't seen from him since before his first marriage fell apart. "I'm choosing the woman who earned her success through hard work and integrity, not the person who tried to steal it through lies and manipulation. I'm choosing my mother, but more importantly, I'm choosing to be the son she raised me to be." Jennifer's sister tugged insistently at her arm, her own legal instincts finally overriding family loyalty. "Come on, Jen. Let's get out of here before this gets any worse. We need to call a lawyer, a real one." As they gathered their designer purses and expensive coats, moving with the frantic energy of people fleeing a crime scene, Jennifer turned back one final time, her eyes filled with venom and wounded pride. "You haven't heard the last of this, Margaret. I have connections, people who will help me fight this. My uncle's a lawyer in Colombia." "Actually, you have heard the last of it," I replied, with the calm authority of someone who'd spent decades in courtrooms dealing with desperate people making empty threats. "And please, give your uncle my regards. Jim Morrison and I served on the Bar Association Ethics Committee together for 6 years. I'm sure he'll be very interested to hear about his niece's attempted elder abuse scheme." Jennifer's face went white as she realized even her supposed ace in the hole was compromised. "Because if you ever step foot on my property again, I'll have you arrested for criminal trespassing faster than you can say family court." "And Jennifer? The next time you decide you want to steal someone's home and life savings, I suggest you do your research first. You might want to make sure your target isn't someone who spent 40 years sending people like you to prison." After they left in a cloud of expensive perfume and wounded pride, their car doors slamming like gunshots in the quiet Charleston evening, David and I sat alone in the quiet dining room. The elaborate Thanksgiving feast was growing cold between us, but somehow the food seemed less important than the healing that was beginning to take place in the warm glow of the antique chandelier. "Mom, how do I even begin to make this right? How do I earn back your trust after what I've put you through? How do I prove that I'm still the son you raised?" I reached across the table and took his hand, the same hand I'd held when he took his first steps, when he was scared of thunderstorms, when he graduated from college, when his first wife left him. "You begin by remembering who you are and who raised you to be. You begin by understanding that real love doesn't ask you to choose between the people you care about. It asks you to protect them all. Your father always said that family, real family built on love and respect, is the only thing in this world that truly matters." As we started clearing the dishes together, working side by side like we had when he was young, I realized this Thanksgiving had given me something profound to be truly grateful for. My son was finally coming home, not just to my house, but to himself and to the values I'd spent his childhood instilling in him. What an absolutely incredible journey this has been. If this story touched your heart and reminded you of the importance of family, respect, and standing up for what's right, don't forget to subscribe for more amazing stories like this one and hit that like button. Your support means the world to me, and I can't wait to share more inspiring stories with you.